he selected to be in charge of creating jobs is Jerry Immelt, the CEO of General Electric, which has more than half the workforce overseas. I'm sure he's deeply interested in jobs in the United States. But what he has is deep pockets, and also, not just him, but connections to the tiny sector of the ultra-rich corporate elite, which is going to provide that, $1 billion or $1.5 billion for the campaign. Well, that's what's going on.
I'd like to ask you about this whole issue of the assault on unions. Clearly, it has arisen in the last few months and in a coordinated way. Here in New York State, all the major business people have gotten together, raised $10 million to begin an ad campaign, and they're being supported by both the Democratic new governor, Andrew Cuomo, and as well as the Republican independent mayor, Bloomberg. But they seem to be going after the public sector unions after having essentially destroyed most of the private sector union movement in the United States. They realize that the public sector unions are still the only vibrant section of the American labor movement. So now they're really going after them in particular. Yet you've got these labor leaders who helped get Obama elected and who helped get Andy Cuomo elected, and they're not yet making the stand in a strong enough way to mobilize people against these policies.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There has been a huge attack against private sector unions. Actually, that's been going on since the Second World War. After the Second World War, the business was terrified about the radicalization of the country during the Depression and then the war. And it started right off with Taft-Hartley. It was 1947, huge propaganda campaigns to demonize unions. It really, it continued until you get to the Reagan administration. Reagan was extreme. The beginning of his administration, one of the first things was to call in scabs. Hadn't been done for a long time. And it's illegal in most countries, in the air controller strike. Reagan essentially, I mean his administration, I don't know what he knew, but they basically told the business world that they're not going to apply the labor laws. So that means you can break unions any way you like. And in fact, the number of firing of union organizers, illegal firing, I think probably tripled during the Reagan years. In fact, by the early 90s, Caterpillar Corporation, first major industrial corporation, called in scabs to break a strike of industrial workers, UAW. I think the only country that allowed that was South Africa. And then it spread. When Clinton came along, he had another way of destroying unions. It's called NAFTA. One of the predicted and the consequences of NAFTA, which in fact worked out, was it would be used as a way to undermine unions. Illegally, of course, but when you have a criminal state, it doesn't matter. So there was actually a study under NAFTA rules that investigated illegal strike-breaking organizing efforts by threats, illegal threats to transfer to Mexico. So if union organizers are trying to organize, you put up a sign saying, transfer Operation Mexico. In other words, you shut up or you're going to lose your jobs. That's illegal. But again, if you have a criminal state, it doesn't matter. Well, by measures like this, private sector unions have been reduced to, I think, maybe 7% of the workforce. Now, it's not that workers don't want to join unions. In fact, many studies of this, there's a huge pool of workers who want to join unions, but they can't. And they're getting no support from the political system. And part of the reason, not all of it, is these $2 billion campaigns. This really took off in the late 70s and the 80s. You want to run for office, you're going to have to dig into very deep pockets. And as the income distribution gets more and more skewed, that means you're going to have to go after Jerry Immelt and Lloyd Blankfein and so on and so forth if you want to even be in office. Take a look at the 2008 campaign spending. Obama way outspent McCain. He was funded, his main source of funding is the financial institutions.
Now they're saying Obama's going to raise $1 billion for the next campaign.
And it'll probably be more than that because they're predicting $2 billion for the whole campaign, and they'll the incumbent usually has advantages.
Noam, we have to break. We're going to come right back. Noam Chomsky, professor of linguistics, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, world-renowned political dissident. Stay with us.
See, I gotta draw a line, I can't take it no more. If you ain't down with revolution, what you waiting for? Making money for suckers and not communities poor. Ripping flags off of coffins, man, this ain't our war. Colonized and terrorized by the world's biggest killers. The U.S. government, the biggest weapon and drug dealers. Filling prisons with children, incarcerating the future. MySpace and Facebook got us stuck on computers. Stuck on stupid bumping music that's abusive to the shorties. And the nonsense that you're spitting, they just listen and absorbing. I've been dormant, I've been woken, I'm a giant, I'm ready. I'm with the apple in Oaxaca and we hold the machetes. I rock hard like Palestinian children holding slingshots. I'm with every single kid that's down for hip-hop. For the culture, the life, what it really stands for. This music is resistance, it's the voice of the poor. I'm on the side of the workers, the teachers and lunch ladies. On the streets with brown mommies raising our brown babies. I'm with youth organizers cleaning up the Bronx River. I'm like Jaime Escalante when I stand and deliver.
Which side are you on, Rebel Diaz? Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Our guest for the hour is Noam Chomsky. He has authored over 100 books, his latest, Hopes and Prospects, among others. Professor Chomsky, I want to ask you about former President Ronald Reagan, right? Very big deal is made of him now on the 100th anniversary of his birth. Last year, President Obama signed legislation establishing a commission to mark the centennial.
President Reagan helped as much as any president to restore a sense of optimism in our country, a spirit that transcended politics, that transcended even the most heated arguments of the day.
Noam Chomsky, your response.
This deification of Reagan is extremely interesting and a very, I mean, scandalous, but it tells a lot about the country. I mean, when Reagan left office, he was the most unpopular living president, apart from Nixon, even below Carter. If you look at his years in office, he was not particularly popular. He was more or less average. He severely harmed the American economy. When he came into office, the United States was the world's leading creditor. By the time he left, it was the world's leading debtor. It's fiscally totally irresponsible. Wild spending, no fiscal responsibility. Government actually grew during the Reagan years. He was also a passionate opponent of the free market. I mean, the way he's being presented is astonishing. He was the most protectionist president in post-war American history. He essentially virtually doubled protective barriers to try to preserve incompetent U.S. management, which was being driven out by superior Japanese production. During his years, we had the first major fiscal crises. During the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the New Deal regulations were still in effect, and that prevented financial crises. The financialization of the economy began to take off in the 70s, but with the deregulation, of course, you start getting crises. Reagan left office with the biggest financial crisis since the Depression, the home savings and loan. I won't even talk about his international behavior. I mean, it was just abominable. I mean, if we gained our optimism by killing hundreds of thousands of people in Central America and destroying any hope for democracy and freedom, and supporting South Africa while it killed about 1.5 million people in neighboring countries, and on, if that's the way we get back our optimism, we're in bad trouble. Well, what happened after Reagan left office is that there was the beginnings of an effort to carry out a kind of with this Reagan legacy, you know, to try to create from this really quite miserable creature some kind of deity. And amazingly, it succeeded. I mean, Kim Il-sung would have been impressed. The events that took place when Reagan died, you know, the Reagan legacy, this Obama business, you don't get that in free societies. It would be ridiculed. What you get it is in totalitarian states. I'm waiting to see what comes next. This morning, North Korea announced that on the birthday of the current god, a halo appeared over his birthplace. That'll probably happen tomorrow over Reagan's birthplace. But when we go and, I mean, this is connected with what we were talking about before. If you want to control a population and keep them passive, keep beating them over the head and let them look somewhere else, the one way to do it is to have them, give them a god to worship.
Noam, you've written about, over the years, COINTELPRO, FBI raids. We're seeing that today. There's almost no attention given to it. We have focused on it a good deal on Democracy Now! From Minneapolis to Chicago. The FBI raids, activists being subpoenaed to speak about in various cases.
Yeah, that's pretty, it's not just, the raids are serious enough, but what's more significant is what lies behind them. These are the first actions taken under new rulings by the Supreme Court. A very important case was 6 or 8 months ago, I guess, Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project. It was initiated by the Obama administration. It was argued by Elena Kagan, Obama's new court appointment, and they won with the support of the far-right justices. The case is extremely significant. It's the worst attack on freedom of speech since the Smith Act 70 years ago. The case determined that any material support to organizations that the government lists on the terrorist list is criminalized, but they interpreted material support. In fact, the issue at stake was speech. Humanitarian Law Project was giving advice, speech, to a group that's on the terrorist list, Turkish PKK. They were advising them on legal advice and also advising them to move towards nonviolence. That means if you and I, let's say, talk to Hamas leaders and say, look, you ought to move towards nonviolent resistance, we're giving material support to a group on the terrorist list. Incidentally, the terrorist list is totally illegitimate. That shouldn't exist in a free society. Terrorist list is an arbitrary list established by the executive with no basis whatsoever, by whim, for example, but no supervision. And if you take a look at the record of the terrorist list, it's almost comical. So take Reagan again. In 1982, the Reagan administration decided it wanted to aid their friend Saddam Hussein. Iraq had been on the terrorist list. They took it off the terrorist list. They had a gap. They had to put someone in.
South Africa and
put in Cuba. They put in Cuba because, and I suppose in honor of the fact that in the preceding several years, Cuba had been the target of more international terrorism than the rest of the world combined. So Saddam Hussein goes off, Cuba goes on, no review, no comment, and now with the new Obama principle, advising groups that are arbitrarily put on this group is criminal, and that was the background for those raids.
Noam Chomsky, we're going to continue this conversation online and play it on the show again. Noam Chomsky, professor of linguistics, Massachusetts Institute of Technology.